Wash these 5 body parts daily to live a longer life. Advice for the elderly. I still remember very clearly that morning. The early autumn cold made the window glass condense a thin layer of frost, and I, as usual, made myself a cup of black coffee without sugar and sat down on the wooden chair by the window. This house I lived in for more than 30 years with my wife, Margaret, before she died of complications from diabetes. We used to plant flowers, hang flags every Independence Day, and quietly watch 3 children grow up and leave the family. But that morning, I felt different. Not because of the wind or the neighbor's snowmobile horn, but because of something a nurse named Emily had said to me during a routine checkup. Mr. Frank, there are things so simple that we don't even pay attention to them, but they are the ones that determine whether we live a healthy or a tired life. I laughed at that at the time, but as I sat sipping my coffee in the dim morning light, I suddenly thought, is there something I've forgotten all these years? I don't smoke. I walk around the block every afternoon. I eat relatively healthy. But something about my body still feels a little off. Some mornings I wake up with a heavy head, a dry mouth, and numb legs. And that worries me. And that thought stuck with me. Until one day, at a Veterans Club meeting in Montpelier, I was chatting with a friend named James, 82 years old, but strong as an ox. And he told me something I will never forget. Frank, don't just worry about diet and exercise. Have you ever paid attention to properly cleaning the parts of your body that no one talks about? And so, from a seemingly trivial conversation, I began to dig deeper and discovered something surprising. There are 5 areas of the body that most of us, especially older people, neglect every day. And the truth is, if we take care of them properly, not only will our breath be fresher, our legs stronger, but our lifespan can also be extended. I know you're wondering, who doesn't cleanse their body every day? But don't jump to conclusions. The things I'm about to tell you may surprise you, as they did me. And if you're like me, with a little nostalgia and a lot of experience, you'll probably realize that self-care isn't about doing something big. It's about doing the little things right. And before I continue sharing, if you are also looking for small habits to live healthier every day, then click the like button on this video, because that will help me continue to share more useful life experiences. And if you haven't yet clicked subscribe to the channel, don't forget to do it now, so you don't miss out on real, touching, and practical stories in the upcoming videos. Now, sit back with your hot cup of coffee or tea, because the first thing I want to tell you about starts in your mouth, but not your teeth, but your tongue. Can you share your story? If you've experienced something similar or discovered a small habit that changed your health, leave a comment below. And if you think someone you know needs to hear this, please share this video with them. I started noticing my tongue one morning when I looked in the mirror after brushing my teeth, only because the light in the bathroom was brighter than usual. A thin white film covered the surface of my tongue, like dust on an unwiped table. I had never paid much attention to it before. I brushed my teeth every day, flossed, rinsed with salt water. But my tongue, I had neglected it for decades. That day, I went to the drugstore on the corner of River Street, where Linda, the older pharmacist, had worked for more than 25 years. She was also a close friend of my wife Margaret's in high school. I asked her about the little tool called tongue scraper, the one Dr. Harris had mentioned. Linda smiled gently. Frank, you're the 3rd person this week to ask me that. It's only recently that people have begun to believe that the tongue needs special care. I bought a stainless steel one for less than $10. That night, after brushing my teeth, I tried it out. I gently slid it back and forth a few times, washing after each. What shocked me wasn't the feeling. It was what I saw on the device. A thin, milky layer of slime, a faint odor, a reminder that I'd been swallowing thousands of bacteria for years without even realizing it. The tongue, thought to be only for tasting and talking, is actually home to more than 700 types of bacteria. For elderly people like me, gums are easily inflamed, tooth enamel is weak, and the immune system is weakened. Bacteria here can easily enter the bloodstream, affecting the heart, diabetes, and especially the breath. My pharmacist friend Linda once told me about a client of hers, Theodore, a 71-year-old former aircraft engineer living in suburban Hartford. After being diagnosed with endocarditis, a bacterial infection in his mouth, he began scraping his tongue every morning. 3 months later, he was more comfortable talking, his breath no longer bothered his wife, and he could taste honey in his tea, something he had previously thought he had lost the ability to taste sweetness. I noticed the same thing. The Earl Grey tea was no longer bland. The apples my daughter cooked for Christmas had a stronger aroma. I felt like I had aged a few years. But what pleased me most was that when my grandson, Jack, ran to hug his grandfather, he no longer grimaced. No need for anything fancy. Just Bemsi, a tongue scraper, stainless steel or medical-grade plastic. Twice daily. Morning before breakfast, evening before bed. Gently pull from back to front 3 to 5 times, then rinse with salt water or a mild mouthwash. Do not use a toothbrush to scrub hard, because the brush head can scratch the tongue without cleaning it completely. It took me less than 3 minutes each time, but the effect was so noticeable that I had to mention it at the veterans meeting last weekend, and now, my whole team, including Walter, John, and grumpy old Steve, each has a scraper in their pockets. A few things to watch out for. If you notice thick white patches on your tongue, ulcers that take a long time to heal, or a burning sensation when eating spicy foods, don't ignore them. Go see a doctor. It could be a sign of a fungal infection or an immune disorder. There are things we think are small, like the tongue, but they turn out to be the boundary between daily fatigue and full vitality. If you are feeling sluggish, have heavy breathing, or a reduced sense of taste, don't reach for the medicine right away. Try looking back at how you care for areas that seem not to need care. Feet, the root of every aging journey. Frank, I don't dare walk around the lake like I used to. Every time I step onto the road, I'm afraid I'll fall. Those words from my long-haul truck driving buddy Thomas Berryman still ring in my head every time I walk down the steps. Thomas, 76, lives in the suburbs of Buffalo, New York. He used to have legs so strong that he could walk a mile from his parking lot to his house without any problems. But now, his ankles ache just standing up to do the dishes. And then, I looked at myself. I still went for a walk every afternoon, still wore the orthopedic sneakers my daughter had bought me for my birthday. But something was wrong. When I stood for long periods of time cooking, my legs felt heavy. At night, I often had cramps, especially in my right leg. I thought it was normal to get older, until Dr. Emma Harris, the doctor who had advised me to scrape my tongue, repeated a familiar line. Frank, are you sure you are taking proper care of the part of your body that will carry you through life? I was speechless, because indeed, I wash my feet, but never take care of them. Our bodies as we age are a lot like a house that has survived a dozen winters. The stronger the foundation, the longer the house will last. Our feet are that foundation. If they are not cleaned, cared for, moisturized, and monitored on a daily basis, the consequences are more than just pain. They can lead to loss of balance, falls, infections, and neurological and circulatory complications. Thomas told me an unbelievable story. He had a slight itch on the sole of his foot. He thought it was just because his shoes were too stuffy, but a few weeks later, the skin there was red, pus-filled, and cracked. He went to the doctor and found out it was athlete's foot, caused by not drying it thoroughly after bathing. It was a small problem, but it lasted for 2 months, affecting his sleep and mood. I used to think, I shower every day, standing under the shower, the water running over my feet is enough. But Dr. Emma reminded me, water that flows through never washes clean. To wash clean, one must touch. And from then on, I developed a new habit. Every night, I sit on a wooden chair next to the bathtub, bring a basin of warm water, add a few drops of peppermint essential oil or Epsom salt, then use a soft brush to gently scrub the soles of my feet, toes, and between my toes. Then, dry completely with a separate towel, especially between my toes, an area prone to moisture and fungal infections. I always remember the story of Mr. James, 83 years old, who used to live near me in Montpelier. He had type 2 diabetes. One day, just because he left his toes wet after taking a shower, the infection spread rapidly and he had to be hospitalized. The doctors almost had to amputate part of his toe. Since then, Mr. James bought his own mini hand dryer, used it to dry his feet every night, and always reminded me, Frank, you shouldn't keep your feet wet for long when you're old. It doesn't take much for fungi and bacteria to get into the weakest spots. Dry, cracked feet are not only painful, they also invite bacteria to enter. Every night after washing and drying, I use a light urea cream on the soles of my feet and heels, never between my toes. That area needs to be dry. This is a habit my wife Margaret used to do for me every winter. Now I do it again, not only because it makes my feet softer, but also as a way to keep her memory alive. Your feet can talk too, if you notice. Of the legs, discoloration may be a sign of poor circulation. Numbness, mild burning, may be a neurological complication, neuropathy. Cracks and ulcers that do not heal absolutely do not be subjective. I once had a slight numbness in my heel, thinking it was due to my shoes, but when I went to the doctor, he said it was a sign of peripheral neuropathy. Thanks to early detection, I avoided terrible complications. I don't share this as advice, but as a word of encouragement. My feet have carried me through hundreds of states, walked with my wife at sunset on Santa Cruz Beach, and held my grandchildren for the first time, and if I didn't take care of them, how many memories would I have left in my life? Underarms, the body's silent defense. Frank, if you don't wash your armpits properly, it's like leaving a clogged drain in the kitchen and then blaming the kitchen for not being clean. That statement, as funny as it sounds, was what Dr. Emma Harris said to me during a routine checkup. I admit, for years I thought, just shower every day, put on some deodorant, and you're done. I, like most men in their 70s, opted for simplicity. But then one evening, while watching the news in the living room, I noticed a tingling sensation under my armpits. Scratching lightly caused a rash. A few days later, the itching turned to burning. And then came the strange body odor, even though I'd been using the same deodorant every day for over a decade. It's not that simple. That's where the lymphatic system is most active. Little did I know that under the thin layer of skin in the armpit, there is a network of lymph nodes, the place to filter bacteria, toxins, and keep our immune system working well. When this area is clogged with sweat, dead cells, bacteria, and residue from deodorant, the nodes will have difficulty functioning. It seems like just a bad smell, but it is actually a sign that the defense line is overloaded. Linda, the pharmacist I often visit on River Street, told me that many elderly people come to her with rashes and small pimples around their armpits, thinking they have a drug allergy. But the cause is actually simple: improper armpit hygiene. After that, I changed my habits as follows. I use a separate soft towel for armpits and neck area only. Every time I shower, I rinse thoroughly with warm water in circular motions, not scrubbing but gently cleaning from multiple directions to wash away sweat and debris. Then rinse with clean water and pat dry with a clean towel, pat, do not rub. You know what? Just such a simple change, and after 3 weeks, the itching, burning, rash disappeared. Body odor also became noticeably lighter, even though I completely reduced the amount of deodorant I used every day. Olivia, 65, is a retired teacher in Southern Oregon who joined me in a weekend gardening group at the community center. She shared, I had been suffering from irritation around my armpits for years, thinking it was age or shower gel, trying a bunch of different products. It wasn't until a friend said to me, Olivia, maybe you're washing too fast, that I tried changing my routine like Frank just described. And oh my gosh, in less than a week my skin was soft, no more red, no more sore. After showering, I always let my armpits air dry for a few minutes before spraying on deodorant. This helps prevent pores from clogging immediately. And if you use a stick deodorant, be sure to wipe your armpits thoroughly before reapplying the next day, because if you leave the old layer on top of the new one, the smell will be worse. Dr. Harris once said, many cases of swollen and painful lymph nodes under the armpits are caused by using deodorants incorrectly and not letting the skin breathe after bathing. If you see small pimples, persistent redness, slight swelling in the armpit area, tingling pain when pressed, strong smell even after using deodorant, don't take it lightly. You may have a problem with clogged sweat glands or a mild infection that needs to be taken care of early. I used to be subjective, but after going to the doctor, I discovered mild folliculitis, something I had ignored for nearly 2 years because I thought it was sweater itch. I share this not to make you worry, but to let you know there are parts of the body that seem to need only water, but actually need special listening and care. I'm not saying you have to change your entire routine right away, but if you're like me and you want to take leisurely afternoon walks without sweating, or hug your grandkids without feeling like you're smelling weird, start with a separate towel and a few minutes of attention each day. The nose, the gateway to breath, health, and sleep. Frank, you know what? A stuffy nose is more dangerous than a lack of sleep, said Helen Carter, a 74-year-old woman at a Tuesday morning health group at the First Congregational Church in Burlington. Helen was a cheerful woman who loved gardening and had a keen sense of smell. She used to have a garden of lavender and mint behind her house, just to get up every morning and cut a few sprigs to put in a pot of hot water. But then, at one point, she complained to me that she could no longer smell anything. It was like living in a glass jar, stuffy and depressing. We breathe more than 20,000 times every day, but we rarely think about the quality of our breath. I, like many others, used to think, breathing is natural, no need to worry. But in fact, every clean breath is a time we provide pure oxygen to the brain, heart, and the whole body. When the nose is blocked, dirty, or dry, we breathe through the mouth, and long-term mouth breathing will cause dry throat, dehydration, lowered immunity, and sleep disorders. Nose care. I learned from a friend with respiratory failure. 2 years ago, my good friend James, who went fishing with me in Maine every summer, was hospitalized with a severe sinus infection. The reason? He had allowed dust particles to build up in his nasal passages for too long without cleaning them properly. After that episode, James became more careful. Every morning and evening, he would rinse his nose with saline or spray it lightly with a saline solution he bought at the pharmacy. I followed suit, and surprisingly, after just a few days of consistent practice, I sleep more soundly and no longer wake up in the middle of the night with a stuffy nose. The feeling of yawning all day due to lack of oxygen also disappeared. And especially, I feel more alert in the morning, no longer feeling like cotton stuffed in my brain every time I wake up. How I clean my nose every day, very gently, like washing your face. I do this at 2 times. Morning. After brushing my teeth, I gently rinse my nose with saline, not too hard. Just tilt my head slightly, spray evenly into both nostrils, then blow out slowly one side at a time. Evening. I put a few drops of peppermint essential oil in a bowl of hot water, cover myself with a towel, and inhale deeply for 3 to 5 minutes before bed. The warm steam helps open up my sinuses, soothe my mucous membranes, and relieve dry winter nasal passages. I don't use a neti pot like some people because of the hassle, but if you like being thorough, it's a good option, as long as you clean it properly. Do not ignore small symptoms if you feel frequent nasal congestion or snore loudly at night, wheezing, waking up with a dry mouth, often loss of smell, reduced sense of taste. Don't ignore it. It could be a sign of chronic sinusitis, loss of dust, filtering ability, or mild lack of oxygen at night, all of which seriously affect brain circulation and the immune system. Nose moisturization, a small thing that many people forget. In Vermont winters, the air is so dry that my hands crack and my nose burns. I learned from Olivia, my teacher in Oregon, that rubbing a little coconut oil or vitamin E into my nostrils every night can help prevent cracking and relieve congestion caused by dryness. Just one small action, but it changes both your sleep and your spirit. We, those of us who have passed the age of 65, 70, 75, no longer need to run fast. But we do need to breathe deeper. A clean, light breath not only keeps the lungs healthy, but also keeps the mind calm. I tell this not as a moral, but as a reminder from someone who has traded sleep for complacency. If you ever wake up tired, short of breath, or wheezing, look at your nose. You might find the answer right there. Navel, the smallest area, but silently hides the most diseases. Frank, have you ever cleaned your belly button? The unexpected question came from Bella, a 76-year-old widow, a new friend in a slow dancing class at the Burlington Community Center. She was a clean, well-groomed woman who had been a nurse for more than 30 years and had a strange habit. Every morning after brushing her teeth, she used a cotton swab to clean her belly button as a meditative ritual. I chuckled when she said that. Belly button? I had never even thought about it. I wash my face, brush my teeth, clean my ears, even scrape my tongue, but belly button, never. Forgotten places. But our bacteria reservoir. After talking to Bella, I look back, and honestly, the last time I cleaned my belly button thoroughly I couldn't remember. Did you know? The belly button is a remnant of the umbilical cord. It has no sweat or sebum glands, but is a deep, closed area that easily accumulates dust, dead cells, and bacteria. Studies have found that the belly button can contain up to 12,300 different types of bacteria, and, if not cleaned, it becomes a potential source of odor and infection. Clark's story. The neighbor from Montpelier. Clark, 80, who lived 2 blocks from me, played dominoes with a group of us every Wednesday afternoon. He was a very clean man, well-groomed with manicured nails. But one day he said to me, "Frank, I have been having some mild pain around my abdomen lately and it hurts to the touch. I only found out later that I have an infection around my navel." The doctor discovered a small fungal infection in his belly button, caused by years of sweat and dead skin cells that hadn't been properly cleaned. Clark was put on topical antibiotics for more than 10 days. Since then, he, like me, has added a small step to his morning routine. Safe way to clean the navel. No need for effortlessness. After bathing, I use a cotton swab soaked in warm water, sometimes adding 1-2 drops of saline. Gently rotate the inside of the navel, then use the other dry end to wipe it clean. I do this about 3 times a week. I don't use too strong soap, nor do I insert the cotton swab too deep inside. Everything needs to be gentle and regular, like the way I water the bonsai tree on the porch. If you see the belly button, there is a strange smell even after just taking a shower, and sweating, itching, or wetness. Has discharge, cracks, burning, or redness. Have a history of diabetes or a weak immune system. Then don't hesitate to see a dermatologist or your family doctor. The belly button, though small, can be the first place to show signs of inflammation, infection, or even underlying disease inside the abdomen. Daily hygiene as a self-love ritual. Olivia, my old friend in Oregon, once said something that I find so true. When you take care of the parts that no one else sees, you begin to respect yourself. And I, an old man approaching 80, also learned that lesson all over again. Not to look clean in anyone's eyes, but to feel like I no longer forget my own body. Small steps, a different life, I know. There are many people out there who brush their teeth, shower, and take care of themselves every day, but neglect the 5 most important areas: tongue, feet, underarms, nose, and navel. I don't blame them. I, Frank, used to be like that. But after just a few months of making those small changes, I felt different. Breathe easier, sleep deeper, less body odor, reduce itching, feel more alive. And what about you? Which of the 5 areas I just mentioned have you been neglecting the longest? Tell me, and tell yourself. Comment below. I read every line. If you think someone, be it a relative, an elderly friend, or a grandparent, needs to know this, please share this video with them. Your sharing could change someone else's life in ways you can't imagine. Finally, if you want to continue accompanying me in the next videos about health, longevity, light living, please click the subscribe button. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upcoming content. There are still many things I want to tell, want to share, if you still want to listen.